this being Wednesday night, let me say just a few things to you before I get into the lesson. I appreciate the invitation that you have given me to come and to be a part of this series of gospel meetings this week, and I appreciate that very much, that you have enough confidence in me to stand before you and proclaim the truth, that you would ask me to come. Keith said something last night, and that I don't feel that way at all, and in our conversation, he talked about, or maybe even Monday night, that some people wouldn't come to work with a small congregation, and he appreciated the fact that I was willing to do. I'm always willing to do that. Size of the congregation has absolutely zero to do with my going someplace. Zero, nothing at all. And preaching and teaching the Word is what I'm interested in and concerned about. And so if I can go somewhere and help some congregation, then I'd be glad to do that. I don't care the number. But if I can help in some way, then I'm always glad to do that. And I guess the hardest thing for us to do is always to select the lessons that need to be presented from night to night. That's the most difficult thing I have in selecting things that I think that would benefit you. I understand that some things can be too deep maybe for audiences, and then I guess they could be too simple, I suppose, to some degree. But selecting lessons that will teach and instruct and that will encourage was my desire. You asked me to preach on some things that would help in your day-to-day lives, and so that's the reason that I have selected the lessons that I have, is I think that they would be beneficial to you. They've helped me, and I hope that they help you in some way. So I appreciate the invitation, and I hope the lessons that we have selected are of benefit to you. Don't you think being content in life is one of the difficult things that you and I have as God's people? Do you think you look around you sometimes and see people that are members of the church that lack contentment in their lives? Why do you think the divorce rate is so high in this country? I'm sure it's like the United States. In the United States, it's almost 1 out of every 2 people who get married end in divorce. Do you think it's contentment? Do you think they're happy and satisfied with the spouse that they have? Do you think the pastures always look greener on the other side of the fence? It's an old expression. That is true. Do you think people are generally content with the houses that they have, the car that they have, the jobs that they have? And do you think they're content with the spiritual relationship that they have with God, or do you think they want something more than just that? When a person is looking for a congregation to attend, are they concerned about the truth that's being taught at that congregation? Or are they concerned about the things that would please and satisfy them? It's no longer that God and God's Word is sovereign, but it's the worshiper, it seems like, is the one who is sovereign. It comes down to pleasing the worshiper, not the one that we worship anymore. There's a number of signs scattered throughout the United States that I've seen in various churches. Come as you are. That thought that's there and expressed there is what pleases you, not what pleases God. You see signs that advertise contemporary worship. Why is it a contemporary worship? Is that the kind of worship that God would be pleased with, or is that the kind of worship that the worshiper wants? Now, you know the answer to that. And I think it's a problem that you and I face as well as the people of God, of learning to be content, as Paul talked about that in Philippians 4. If you'll turn there, we'll read verses 10 through 13 together, or you can simply follow along on the screen. Paul said there, "But I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again, though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity." He said, "Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content." Whatever state he was in, he says, I've learned to be content in that state. Are we that way? We're pretty good sometimes at complaining, don't you think so? Do you ever complain? Most of us do at some time and at some point, don't we? Why do we complain? Is it because we're not content? Isn't that really the reason that we complain? I believe that's the reason. But he said it's a state that he had learned. In other words, it's something that he finally had grasped, as we can see. He said, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So now that's what we need to learn as well. We need to learn contentment. Sometimes, do you think we appreciate the things that we really have? We don't appreciate the things that we have sometimes until we don't have those things anymore. I remember traveling one year to Russia, and I remember having a little trickle of water in the apartment that we were staying in. Just a little trickle. That's all we had. We didn't have any hot water. This was in summer, no hot water. Just a little trickle of water. And Phil Morgan and I, we had traveled there to Moldova, actually. It was a former Soviet Union. And he and I complained about that little trickle of water. Said, you know, we'd like to have a little more water than that. And then all of a sudden we went in there one day and we turned it on and we didn't have a trickle. And so we had to go down the hill and we had to fill buckets of water and take those back up the hill just to flush the commode. And I'm going to tell you, we made a lot of trips up and down that hill. And so finally we prayed, Lord, give us our trickle back, and we will not complain anymore. We finally got that trickle back, and I'm going to tell you, we did not open our mouths again. You know, we can learn valuable lessons from little things like that sometimes. We take things for granted and complain about even the good things sometimes that we do indeed have and that we enjoy. But we need to learn to be content. And so I want to suggest some things to you. First of all, I want us to notice how. That's the point of the lesson. How can I learn to be content? Well, let me suggest some things to you. One thing that we need to do is to keep our focus in life. You know, sometimes we lose our focus. We focus upon the wrong things sometimes even. And so learning to be content is keeping our focus in life. And that's one of the things, obviously, that we need to do so that we can learn to be content. One thing is that we have to learn and keep our focus on is that this world is not our home. You know, we talked about that a little bit the other night. And there are a number of verses that teach that very thing. Here in Hebrews 11, verses 13 through 16, he said, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were assured of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Don't you think that part of this verse at least has reference to Abraham? If he had been mindful of the country from which he had come, he could have returned to that country, couldn't he? He had come from the Ur of Chaldeans, hadn't he? He had traveled, you remember, northwest, and he had traveled up and settled in a town that was called Haran. It's interesting because that was his brother who had died back in Ur of Chaldeans. That was Lot's father, you remember, that we looked at the other night. Eventually he travels south and he goes down to the land of Canaan. But if he had been mindful of that country, he could have gone back to that country. But that's not what God told him to do. God basically told him to pack his bags and leave Ur of Chaldeans. Leave your homeland. He understood that he was nothing more than a stranger and a pilgrim upon this earth. I'm going to tell you, that's the same is true with you and I. Regardless of where you're from, regardless of where you live. My home now is in Tullahoma, Tennessee. But that's really not my home. In one sense of the word. I'm just a pilgrim and a stranger. I'm just passing through. And I live there in preparation for that city that I desire to go to. And that's heaven. See, we can learn to be content by keeping our focus upon the ideal and our thoughts centered upon the matters of being pilgrims and sojourners here. And you see, if we keep our focus upon that, then we're not attached to this world because we know we're going to leave these things behind. That's how we learn to be content, is to keep our focus on those things. I remember being in the Ukraine in a town called Mariupol on the Sea of Azov. And we had Bible studies in a house of a guy by the name of Alexander, I believe. But regardless of the name, it doesn't matter. I remember sitting and studying with he and his wife, and I remember looking at their apartment that they lived in and noticing the somewhat dilapidated condition of that apartment. And I'm going to tell you, it was not up to Canadian standards, and it's not up to American standards. And I remember seeing that, and I remember seeing the condition. But I was also amazed at the man and the woman that lived there, that they were perfectly happy with that place. They were content with it. And I said, now if I lived here, would I be content with that? Especially knowing the way I had lived previously. But they were contented with that. And one of the things that interested me about them was the fact that they knew that one day that they were going to leave that behind, and they had a mansion waiting for them over on the other side. See, that's what you and I have to do in learning contentment, is to keep our focus in life and understand that we are nothing more than strangers and pilgrims here upon this earth. Now look at these words as these words are defined. The word stranger is a foreigner or a stranger, Mr. Thayer says in his word study. It generally means a stranger from another place, from some other place. You know, if I walked down the streets of Kingston tonight and somebody heard me talk, do you think they would recognize me as being from Kingston? And they'd say, well, no, you're not from around here, are you? That's what we would say in Tennessee. If we heard someone say oot, we would say, you're not from around here, are you? Because we say out, you know? And so if I heard someone call a couch a Chesterfield, as Sylvia said the other day, you know, I would know that she's not from around here, not from Tennessee. We don't call it a Chesterfield in Tennessee. You know, it's amazing. That's serviette. You know, we call that a napkin at home. I would say, well, you're not from around here. I would understand, I would recognize it. And the same is true with me being here. Sometimes you may have to ask me, now what was it that you said? Because you may not pick up on my language, the way that I pronounce things. We recognize that. So we're strangers. We're not from this country. We're from another place. I'm from another place. I'm not from Kingston, Ontario, Canada. I'm from Tullahoma, Tennessee. And the same is true with us while we're living upon this earth, regardless of where we're at. We're strangers here. We're strangers. That's what the Lord tells us in this text. The word pilgrim, one who comes from a foreign country into a city or land to reside there by the side of the natives. Hence, strangers are sojourning in a strange place, or a foreigner in the New Testament metaphorically in reference to heaven as the native country and one who sojourns on earth. You see where we're from? We're from heaven. You say, well, how can we be from heaven? I thought we were trying to get there. But that's the way that he uses the words. Heaven is the place that God has built for us. That's our city. Though we hadn't been there yet, it's still our city yet. And so we're strangers and pilgrims while we're here on earth. And so one of the ways that obviously that we can learn to be content is by keeping our focus. Notice some comments upon this verse. William Barclay, in his commentary, he says, in the ancient world, the fate of the strangers was hard. He was regarded with hatred and suspicion and contempt. I'm going to tell you, you travel outside the United States or outside of Canada, and you'll be treated that way a lot of times. You'll be treated with suspicion or contempt. And that's how strangers were treated. And so it's kind of a harsh way to be treated with them. This same reference, he said, at any time it is an unhappy thing to be a stranger in a strange land. But in ancient days, to this natural unhappiness there was added the bitterness of humiliation. The way that people would treat you because of the fact that you were not a native of that country. What if the Lord told you that I want you to leave Kingston, Ontario, Canada tonight? I want you to pack your bags, and I'm going to send you to some third world country. You think you'd be happy once you got there? How do you think you'd be treated once you got there? Do you think you'd be a little intimidated when you went in the country? Do you think people would treat you with suspicion there? Do you think people might be unkind to you there? Simply because you're from a different part of the world. See, we're just pilgrims and sojourners here. He said there is an unwritten saying of Jesus, the world is a bridge. The wise man will pass over it, but will not build his house upon it. It's a pretty good saying, isn't it? Now, he doesn't mean that we don't have a dwelling place here. But what he's telling us is that we don't get attached to this world. We don't get attached to the things of this world. And I tell you, if we're not attached to the things of this world, we can be content with whatever it is that we've got in this world, because we're not attached to these. See, we got to keep our focus. And our focus is upon God and heaven and going to the home that he has prepared for us. Our focus should be on those things above. Colossians 3, verses 1 and 2, he says, if then you were raised with Christ, they were raised with Christ, there was no doubt about it. He was pointing out the fact that they had been. You go back to chapter 2, verse 12, and you can see that. He said, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above and not on things on earth. See, we need to be mindful of the things above and not just those things, not those things upon earth. Our mind should be on those things. That should be what we should be striving to do, is to love and serve the Lord and think upon spiritual things day in and day out, and keeping our focus upon those things. So that's how we can learn to be content with such things as we have. Brother Weaver's commentary on Colossians, he quotes a man by the name of Edie. He said, attached to things on the earth is unworthy of, attachment to things on the earth is unworthy of one who is risen with Christ. He said, for they are beneath him. Now, look very closely at this. He said, attachment to the things on the earth is unworthy of one who is risen with Christ, for they are beneath him, and the love of them is not at all in harmony with his position and prospects. What can wealth achieve for him who has treasures laid up in heaven? Or honor for him who is already enthroned in heavenly places? Or pleasure for him who revels in newness of life? Or power for him who is endowed with moral omnipotence? Or fame for him who enjoys the approval of God? Nay, too often when things of the earth are possessed, they concentrate the heart upon them, and the look and thoughts are downward bent. They turn us downward, not upward. It's the things from God that turns us upward, isn't it? See, our focus should be upon the things from the Lord. But let me suggest something else to you. Not only do we need to keep in focus the fact that we're just pilgrims and sojourners upon this earth and constantly focus upon the things above, but we need to have a value system as well. We need to understand what's really valuable in life. Do you understand what is really valuable in life? Do you have anything really valuable? We have some things that we think are valuable sometimes, don't we? As far as material things. You know, I dare say that you have some things that you wouldn't take anything for. They're probably not worth anything to anybody else, but you wouldn't take anything for them. I have one such thing that automatically comes to mind when I think of something valuable in my house. If they broke into my house and they stole my computer and what the old TV is not worth very much, whatever else little things that they may find there, that wouldn't, I don't want them to do that, but there's one thing that I would not want them to take. I have a picture of my great-granddad. I wouldn't take anything for that picture. That's my pride and joy, that picture. That I have a picture of my great-granddad. I love that picture. Doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but it does to me. But you know, there are some things that we need to understand the value. We need to have that value system, don't we? And the Bible really teaches us that. You know, what is it that you really treasure? Jesus asked this question, you remember in Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. He said, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What is it that you really treasure in life? Do you really treasure those things that are in heaven, or do you treasure the material things upon this earth? See, that's the reason why we need to have a proper value system. If we have the proper value system, then we're going to learn to be content, because our treasures are in heaven, and that's where we're going. See, we need to keep the proper focus by understanding that we aren't just pilgrims and sojourners here, and understand what's truly important in life and what's really valuable in life. I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but this happened in the United States, and I'm sure it's probably happened to you too. If you had an IRA, did it lose over the last months, year or two? When I was in Nashville, I had some, and by the time I got to Tullahoma, it looked like I didn't have any. And then after I'd been at Tullahoma for a little while, it looked like I had gained most of that back. And now it looks like I've lost most of that again. Is that the way he said? But what difference does that make? You know, I had lost one week of sleep over that. Not 1 week. Because it's immaterial. It's immaterial. Those are not the things that are really valuable to us. See, moth and rust, their wealth and riches of that day and time, moth and rust could destroy. You and I think, well, we have banks today, and we can put our money in the bank, and we cannot lose in the bank. You know, we're guaranteed by the government that those funds are worth so much money, that if the bank collapses, that they'll pay for that. Well, what if the government collapses? Then what's going to happen? Then who's going to pay for that? Well, it's just gone, isn't it? That's really what happens to it. But you know, we think that those things are secure. You know, there's some people in the world, they think those things are secure. And I'm going to tell you, that's not where security is found, is it? It's not in those material things. And we need to make sure that our treasure is in heaven, where thieves cannot break in and steal, nor rust nor moth can destroy. If our riches are in heaven, then we have that value system, and that's the system that we need. Look at the example of Moses. He said, by faith Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproaches of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. He understood and had a value system, didn't he? He understood that there was treasures in Egypt, but the reproaches of Christ, of loving and serving God and serving God's people, was greater wealth than anything that Egypt had to offer. And the same is true with you and I. You know, the psalmist looked around the world and he saw the wealth of those that were evil and wicked. And he said, it troubled him to no end. He said, until I went into the house of the Lord, and he said, I considered their end. And once he considered their end, he realized that all the things that they had collected, that one day when life was over, then all of that would be left for someone else, and it wouldn't do them 1 ounce of good. And the same is true of you and I. You know, so we can learn contentment if we have a value system of making sure that we treasure the right things. If we treasure the right things, those things cannot be taken from us. I told you about my little picture of my great-granddad just a moment ago. You realize that there's something happening with that picture. You know what it is? You do know, don't you? It's fading, isn't it? And one day, it'll not be there. You won't be able to see it. And it won't be 2 years from now. That it'll just not be there. I hope to have it restored and put into something else done to it before it totally fades. But that original one will eventually fade and be destroyed. The same is true with anything that you treasure in life, that it'll eventually be destroyed. I remember Sylvia having her wedding dress hanging in the closet for a number of years. I hadn't seen it in a while. I'm not sure what happened to it. But I know that it doesn't fit anymore. And I'm not going to tell you which way it doesn't fit. And then that way I won't get in trouble if you ever talk with Sylvia. But it just does not fit anymore. And it's not really valuable anymore, is it? It may be something that she cherishes, but one day it won't be there, and it'll be gone. Moths can destroy it. See, we need that kind of value system. Just like Moses had. He was a great example for us as well. Listen to what Solomon said. He said, I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on all the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for wind. There was no profit under the sun. He said, what good is it going to do? You know, one of the things that Solomon said of all the wealth that he had, he said, I'm going to leave it behind. And he said, you know, I don't know who I'm going to leave it behind to. He said, the people that I leave it behind to, they may be fools. And he said, I'm going to leave it to them. He was concerned about that. And they did squabble over it, didn't they? That is for sure. But he looked on all those things, and he said all this was vanity and grasping for wind. Vexation of the spirit. You ever tried to grab wind? Can you do it? I've never been able to do that. And I dare say you hadn't either. And the same is true with the things that one may have in life. They're not going to do you any good at all, because you're going to leave those things behind. Finally, he said, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. I like the King James here. He said, for this is the whole duty of man. Want to know what's really important in life? Love the Lord. Serve him. Do what's right. That's what's really important. That's what we need to seek to do. See, we need that value system in our lives to learn to be content. Paul's admonition was this. In 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 through 18, he said, therefore, we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. He said, even though our outward man is perishing. Well, I tell you, I know that more and more and more. I tell people all the time, you know, there's 2 or 3 things that happens to your hair. It either turns loose or turns gray. Both happen to me. I asked a little girl, her mother had done her hair up this really pretty one time, and she's my little buddy at church. Her name is Alina, and I said, Alina, you think your mom might do my hair that way? She said, no, you don't have enough. And she's right, I don't. Because she could see that bald spot in the top of my head. No, I don't have enough. I tell people all the time, I've got a lot of things that doesn't belong to me, really, in one sense of the word. Some of the teeth that I have, they're really not my teeth. I'm not sure where they came from, but at least the dentists were able to get those to fit so that I can use them, and so far that I'm appreciative. But you know, that happens to you when you get old, doesn't it? You know, I was hoping to have new glasses before I got up here. I can't see quite as good with these as I could when I first got those. I've had them for about 3 years. They were supposed to have been there Thursday, and I left on Saturday, and they still wasn't there. They came Monday, which they did me a lot of good in this meeting. They're at home, but so at least they'll be there when I get home. But you know, there's a lot of things that happen to us in life. Back earlier this year, and actually the end of last year, I had 3 or 4 bulging discs in the upper part of my neck. If I'd had to come up here back then, I would not have been able to make it. I would have had to cancel and let you get someone else, because I just could not drive or ride for any length of time at all. I just couldn't do that. Right now I have a big toe that hurts. I can hardly walk. It hurts to walk. Not sure what's wrong with it. But you have aches and pains as we get older, don't you? See, what's happening is that the outward man is perishing. But I hope the inward man is being renewed day by day. I hope the inward man is being strong. That's what the Lord wants me to be. He wants me to be strong, that I can look beyond death and dying, and I can see that there's life beyond that. See, I've got to have that kind of value system. And regardless of what's happening to me in life, if I love and serve the Lord, and if I'm faithful to Him, that there's something better that's waiting me. The things upon this earth bring no lasting joy and happiness and peace. But the things above does. That's the things that I've got to see. That's why I need to learn to be content. I can learn to be content when I keep my focus and when I have a value system. But you know, I also have to have faith and trust in the Lord. Regardless of what's happening in life. Are there always good things that happen to us in life? No, there's some bad things that happen to us in life. And we have to have faith and trust in the Lord and learn to be content even in the face of the difficult days that we have. That's what the Lord wants us to do. He wants us to have faith and trust in Him. Notice Paul's strong faith in the Lord. He said, "For this reason I also suffer these things, nevertheless I'm not ashamed. For I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep what I have committed to him unto that day." See, now we've got a value system. We understand what's really important in life. Now, what is the only thing that you and I have that is of any value whatsoever, really? It's our soul. Jesus says, "What shall a man profit if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul?" Jesus understood what was really important. Jesus understood what was valuable. The only thing that you and I have that is of value is our soul. And Paul says, "I've committed that to him until that day." That's what we have to do as well. That's how we can learn to be content when we have that kind of faith and trust. See, we keep our focus in life, and our focus is upon spiritual things. We have a value system, but we know that spiritual things are more valuable than the material things, and we have this strong faith and trust in the Lord that he'll keep that which I've committed, and that I know that when this life is over, that something better is awaiting me. That's how I can learn to be content. There's something much better that's awaiting for me when life is over. Abraham's example. He said, "By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place where he would receive his inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he dwelt in the land of promises in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise, for he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God." Did he mind dwelling in tents? Did he mind leaving his homeland behind? Did he mind leaving the people that he was raised up with? He didn't mind doing any of that because he had such a strong faith in God. God said, "Leave Abraham." Abraham left. See, he had faith and trust in the Lord. That's what we have to have. And that's how we can learn to be content as well. When we commit that which we have that is of value to the Lord, and listen to the Lord, and knowing that there's a city that's prepared for us, whose builder and maker is God. See, he trusted the Lord, didn't he? He trusted what the Lord had to say for him. Look at that journey. That was quite a journey, wasn't it? You know, you and I get in a car and we drive, and and we can get that kind of distance in not too many hours in the car. But think on foot. He left to the Ur of Chaldeans, goes up to Iran, and eventually travels back down. Remember, to the land of promise, to the land of Canaan, that was eventually given to his people. But yet he packs up his bags and he leaves just like God tells him to leave. He has that kind of faith. There was the encouragement that was given in Hebrews 10, verses 32 through 34. He said, "But recall the former days in which after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with suffering. Partly while you were made a spectacle by both reproaches and tribulations, and partly while you became companions of those who were so treated. For you had compassion on me and my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods." Now, notice why they were able to do that. Accept the plundering of their goods, and all the suffering and the pain that they went through, said, knowing that you have a better and enduring possession for yourself in heaven. See, that's how we can learn to be content. Because we know, regardless of what we may have in life, how little or how much, we learn to be content with the things that we have and use what we have to the glory of God, because we know that one day that we'll leave these things all behind. And that we have an enduring possession for us in heaven. That's what God's promised us. You know, I may not have as much as somebody else here. But you know, I can have a strong faith and trust in God. And if I have that strong faith and trust in God, then there's something waiting me more than what the wealthiest person upon this earth has. More than all that they have. Would you say Bill Gates is a wealthy man? It rocks back and forth between him and Warren Buffett and a fellow down in Mexico who are the richest people in the world. They have billions and billions and billions of dollars between them. Would you trade places with them? Would you trade your soul for those billions of dollars? No. One day they'll leave those billions of dollars behind. And you know they're going to be just like you and I. They're going to stand before God in judgment, and they're going to have to answer for how they live their lives. That doesn't mean that you can't have billions of dollars and go to heaven. You can. But you have to make sure that you use your riches to honor and glorify God. See, there's something better that's waiting for us. So, learning to be content, keep our focus, have a value system, have great faith and trust in the Lord. And then finally, in closing, understand that there's strength that's provided by the Lord. Let's look at that verse. Think about that once again. Paul's assurance. Remember, as we read. Look at the last part of this that we've already read in the beginning. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You mean He'll provide strength for me? Yes. All things. Is that unlimited? No, sir. That has its limitations, doesn't it? As we look at the context and the setting of this, all things through Christ who strengthens me, everything that God commands or requires of me, I can do that through Christ who strengthens me. That's what he's talking about. Everything that God requires of me. You know, I may not have the talent to be a gospel preacher or a song leader. You know, I may not have the talent to be a Bible class teacher. I may not have that talent. But I'm going to tell you, God will give me the strength to do what He tells me to do with the talents that I have, whatever those talents are. I've got to search and see what kind of talents I have in services to Him, and I've got to make sure that I use those talents to His honor and to His glory. He'll give me the strength to use those talents. He'll give me the strength to do anything that He tells me to do. It's always there. He'll always be there and help me and encourage me. He'll never leave me nor forsake me, the Bible says. We have that assurance. See, the strength is provided for each other. Do you think we get strength from one another? Don't you think that's one of the reasons that we ought to be together as the people of God? It's because of the strength that we can get from each other. The encouragement, the teaching, the instruction, the love, the care, the concern, all of those things we get as we come together. You know, that was God's purpose and plan. We often look at Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some, but exhorting one another, so much the more, he says, as you see the day approaching. You know, I've seen brethren sit and argue what day he was talking about. And I tell them all the time, what difference does it make what day it's talking about? You're missing the point of the verse. I really believe that the day he's talking about is the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. That's my personal view. You may have a different view on that. But regardless of that, he tells us not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together, but back up a verse. He tells us that the reason that we should come together is to provoke one another in love and good works. Some translation says, stir up love and good works among us, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together. Strength God provides for us. Paul says here, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And he certainly strengthens us, doesn't he? The Lord will provide. Paul, you remember, and the problem that he had with the thorn in the flesh, you remember. In 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 through 10, he said, and lest I should be exalted above measure, by the abundance of the revelation, the thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing I pleaded with the Lord 3 times, that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasures in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecution, in distresses, for Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Now there's 3 times that Paul prayed and he asked God to remove that thorn in the flesh. What was God's answer every time? His answer every single time was no. See, that tells us that when we pray to God and when we seek God in prayer, that his answer is not always yes. Sometimes it's no. Was it the best thing for Paul? Yes, sir, it was. It was the best thing for Paul. What was it that Paul needed? He said, lest I should be exalted above measure. Lest he become proud and haughty. Why? because of the abundance of revelation that was given to him. God revealed his mind through the Apostle Paul. And he said, lest I be exalted above measure, there was the thorn in the flesh. Have you ever read Adam Clark's commentary on this particular verse? If you read Adam Clark's commentary on this particular verse, you'll notice that there's this great numbers of things that he says the thorn of the flesh could be. You know what that tells us? That tells us that Adam Clark didn't know. That's what it tells us. And I'm going to tell you, you don't know what it is either, and neither do I. Now, we can speculate and guess all night long, but there was some thorn in the flesh that Paul had that was given to buffet his body. But notice what he said. He says, God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Paul, I'll give you the strength that you need to endure this. That's what he says. He said, for when I am weak, then I am strong. What did he mean by that? Is that a paradox? It's a paradoxical statement, isn't it? It's when he was weak that he turned to God, and once he turned to God, it was the strength that he received from God to help him to endure through the problems that he was facing in life. See, strength provided to help us to deal with any situation that we find ourselves in life, if we're simply faithful to the Lord. See, we learn contentment, don't we? It's something that we learn. And the way we can learn that is by keeping our focus, realizing that this world's not our home. We're just passing through. We often sing that song. Do you think about it really in the words in the song when you sing? You realize that you can sing a lie just like you can tell a lie? Seen people sing to the top of their voice, oh, I want to be a worker for the Lord. And they wouldn't work if their life depended upon it. They just sung a lie. See, we've got to keep our focus in life. We've got to make sure that we have that value system. We've got to have that strong faith and trust in the Lord to deal with the problems that we have to face in life. And if we do that, then He'll give us strength. We can learn to be content in whatever situation we find ourselves in life. Use the things that we have to honor and to glorify the Lord and to faithfully serve Him. Are you content? Or do you find yourself complaining? Are you content with the material things that God has blessed you with? Let me ask you this evening, do you have any money in your wallet, your purse? Did you have a good meal before you came here? Did you ride here in a warm car? Do you have a house to go to? Do you realize that you have more than the vast majority of the world if you have those few things? I remember walking down the street in one of the former Soviet countries and saw an old lady lying on some newspapers underneath a cover outside. No place to sleep. And you know, sometimes we complain about the place that we have. Sometimes we complain maybe about the food that we have to eat that's not as good as somebody else, but yet we're not hungry. We find ourselves complaining about a number of things. Even spiritually speaking, sometimes the preacher, we complain about him. He either preaches too long or too short. There's never a just right sermon. He's too loud or he's too soft. Used to have two ladies that they would stick their fingers in their ears when I'd get up to preach. I tried to tell them, I said, why don't you sit in the back and I won't bust your eardrums? You know? I mean, there's some people that are never, ever happy. You know what happened about one of those ladies? One of those ladies came to me some time ago. She would like to hear that now. She don't hear as well. Well, she had changes, didn't she? And didn't appreciate the changes that she had. Those kind of things happen. You know, the song leader, he doesn't pick the right song. He either gets it pitched too high or pitched too low. Isn't that the case? And then we begin to complain to the Lord. Well, I don't want to worship the way you say. You know, I want to do my own thing. I want to have it my way. Are you content with doing things just like the Lord said? You know, that's the thing, isn't it? See, there's so many areas of our life sometimes that we lack contentment in. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to work and make our lives better. The Lord doesn't begrudge us that, does he? But we still should be thankful and grateful for what we have and learn to be content with those things, even as we're trying to maybe to make ourselves better. So what about you this evening? Are you one that could be said of you that you're content? Why not learn to be content? If you're not a Christian, why not become one this evening? Why not allow your faith to move you to repent and confess your faith in him as Lord? We'll baptize you in water for remission of your sins. If you've done that and not lived faithfully, you can repent of those things, confess them to God, we'll pray with and for you, God will forgive you, and God will cleanse you. So if you're here this evening, you're saved, why not begin from this moment forward to appreciate the things that you have in life, both physically, but above all, spiritually, because you're so blessed to be able to enjoy those spiritual blessings in Christ Jesus. Set your affections on things above. Love him and serve him and be faithful to him. And when life is over, you don't have anything to worry about. Heaven can be your home. We can help you in your obedience once you come, as we stand together and sing this hymn. Brother Joe, lead us.